after the meeting, it's simply because your question is super specific to you, and we don't want to hold up everyone else. All right. Ben, you ready to record?
Yep, we are recording.
Excellent. Okay, can everyone see my presentation?
Looks good, Joe.
Pardon?
Yes.
All right.
Looks good.
All right. So I can't see myself and the presentation, so I'm just going to move myself to the side. I know what I look like. All right, everyone. My name is Joe Smoke. I am the Director of the Grants Programs at DCA. This is my 20th year with the department, and I'm going to lead you through this COLA workshop tonight. We're only covering our COLA Master Fellowship program. We do have another individual artist program called AIR, Artists in Residence, and I'll make one mention of that later. It's a different program with different criteria, funds a different kind of artistic project. You're welcome to apply to both with category-specific proposals. So I'm opening with the message page that you all had a chance to read. Just want to make sure that you understand that the COLA program is combined with our Cultural Trailblazer program. It's a request for proposals. We're seeking to fund a spectrum of mid-career literary, performing, and visual design artists. We're going to give you a $10,000 grant to create a new body of work. You should be a solo artist for this project, and we'll define more about that later for our performing artists who may be used to hiring others to perform with them. The grants will be available between the fall of 2021 and spring of 2022. And then because this is public money and we're required to have a public presentation, the Department of Cultural Affairs will promote you and your past work and hopefully your new work, if it's done on time, in a printed catalog that will be disseminated to all of our branch libraries. And we will also have a digital print-on-demand catalog on our website, so your friends and family can download a copy of the catalog and print it at home. We may set up other artist talks and presentations. In the past, the COLA program has traditionally been a catalog plus other exhibitions and performances. We have no idea what our budget's going to be like this year, so we're telling you right up front, it's going to be absolutely a catalog and anything else we can afford to promote. For those of you who've applied before, please be reminded that the panelists change every year. So it's important for you to see this as a really easy grant application that you do every October, and just keep updating your materials. You should not be expecting to get this on the first try. You're basically waiting for the perfect alignment between what you do and the panelists' interests. And because the panelists change every year, the spectrum of artists and their interests change. I'll mention several times tonight that this is a program for solo artists, not groups. So if your entire portfolio or career has been built on being a choreographer for a dance company, and you only choreograph group work, and perhaps you aren't even in all of the work, then this may not be the best program for you, because we really keep it pure to people that are the fellow producing their work. As part of the application program, I'll give you some strategic hints about what to put in your proposal. That's the cost of coming tonight. Our evaluations tell us that people who take the webinar do 20% better with the panels, because you don't make the simple errors that people make who are going to read this at midnight the night before and dash something together. So congratulations to all of you on taking the right step forward already. And the first thing is right there. Be ready to show recent artwork from the past 3 years that is self-made. Don't show us your collaborative artworks. unless you're applying as a duo, because it just confuses the panel about which part is you and which part is other people. And in a time when journalism has sort of collapsed, we find that most people are sending us letters of recommendations as supplemental material from academics, from curators, from colleagues who have insightful things to say about your past work. Those are the two elements that are going to be best. So Ben, I'm going to just ask you to speak up whenever we get, maybe 5 questions, and then I'll stop.
Understood, Joe. We are clear sailing at the moment.
Perfect. So the COLA program is going to honor an assortment of LA's best contemporary, and perhaps the word avant-garde belongs there, solo artists. This is not a grant for someone who's a hobby artist. It's really for people who are professional artists and make contemporary work. And it is an assortment. The collection of fellows that are selected almost never makes any sense. There's no theme. And we really don't want you to veer from your focus as an artist and do something that's thematic for the city of Los Angeles. You are welcome to continue making work about the city of Los Angeles if that's what you already do, but simply because we're the sponsor doesn't mean that you should cater your proposal to us. In your materials, you're going to show us that you're dedicated to an ongoing body of excellent work. You represent a relevant progression through your pieces or series, and that you exemplify a generation of core ideas, and that your letters of support and other things will show us that you're respected by peers and a role model, and that's why we want to give you this fellowship. Here are the categories again. I would tell you that one of the first questions we often get from artists is, I'm an architect who's also a poet and a musician. Great, but for this COLA proposal, you will be telling us about what you are presenting. So if it is that you're composing new music, and that is what you would do with the $10,000, then we want you to apply as a performing artist with one proposal and focus on your 15 years of excellent work as a composer musician. That's the way to think of these categories. It's not that we're limiting you to being one-dimensional. It's that this is the selection of the panelists that will review your work. So you don't want to apply as a composer musician and then click design visual, because the wrong people will be looking at your work. And then as you can imagine, there's so many amazing artists in Los Angeles, and the panelists always feel terrible that they can't reach deeper and wider. So we have created a cultural trailblazer category for people that the panelists really respected. And with those Trailblazer awards, you get a $400 stipend, and we do a story about you on our website as somebody who's doing exciting work in the Los Angeles region. So know that we've created that other scenario here because, again, there's just too much, too many great artists in LA. The application should be very simple for you. It's really just these items. It's your artist statement. It's a narrative of what you propose to do with the money. It's your resume. It's your artistic samples. And then it's your supplemental letters of support. A budget is not required, but we would tell you to be realistic. So if you think about the $10,000, think about making work with $6,000, and then be realistic about the fact that there are also taxes to pay, and there's time administrating your contract. There's meetings. There's the commissioning of an essay for your catalog. For the catalog. So we want you to be realistic about the 10K. That's one of the mistakes that artists make in a competition where they, try to save the world with 10K. We'd rather have you be realistic. We're going to premiere your work, as I said, in one or more public presentations in the spring of 2022. So you're going to be forecasting for us what you're might be doing in spring of 2022. So this is it's a grant proposal is nothing more than a plan for where you're going next. If you know your next two ideas and you have a priority order for them, then tell us about the one that's most exciting and maybe mention the other one in passing. But we really want you to project what you'll be doing in the spring of 2020, because that's when we'll be putting you in the catalog and potentially other public programs. The payments, just so you know in advance, we would love to be one of those private funders that shows up at your door and rings the bell and brings you a $10,000 check and gets you all excited. But we are the government, and so our program is bureaucratic. We disperse your payment in 4 installations: $4,000, $3,000, $1,500, $1,500. So you also have to think about the fact that you're not going to be in receipt of all of the funds right away. And so you're going to have to manage that expectation. DCA also has an artist in residence program. Our grants in the AIR category are to support teaching artists who want to embed themselves in a not-for-profit or a community organization and do participatory art making. You do 5 workshops and a culminating event with your group of participants, and those are $6,000 grants. So if you are somebody who does both things, you're both a studio artist and a teaching artist, then please feel welcome to apply to both programs. So tell us right up front, are you a master solo artist or are you a collaborative duo? If you're a duo, we expect 1 resume that shows all the things you've done together as a duo, right? We don't want you to have, 2 artists that each have 7 years on your resume, and you think that by adding it together, that's going to make 14 and make it. We do make a special exception for the 15 years, and that is with choreographer dancers. We know that a dancer's life begins quickly and ends in their 20s and 30s. And so we allow dancers to apply to this program with 8 years on their resume. 1 proposal only, please. So pick your best opportunity. You're going to have to show us that you're a current resident of LA County. So if you're listening tonight from somewhere outside of LA County, I'm sorry you're not eligible. And in addition to that, if you don't live in the city of Los Angeles, we want to make sure that you show us on your resume that you have a history of at least 3 years of showing your work in the city of Los Angeles. So that helps us keep the program to artists who have been here, are residents for at least 3 years, and participating in the regional and municipal arts ecology. Your resume activity, it should show that you're a working artist now. Please don't tell us that you stopped exhibiting 5 years ago. That's not a good sign for the panel. But please know that it can include publications and performances and exhibitions of when you were a post-secondary student. We do not tell you when you're making your mature work. So if you feel like you're making mature work as an undergrad and grad, then include those exhibitions and presentations in the 15 years on your resume, or 8 for choreographer dancer. And I'll also note here that your years on your resume do not need to be consecutive. We're more than familiar with artists who take time off, have a family, come back to their creative process. So we're looking for 15 years on your resume counting backwards. We're not looking for those to be chronological. And then here's one last tidbit on this page. If your presentation history demonstrates that you primarily have created work for a group or ensemble, if we keep seeing on the resume, Joe Smoke Dance Company, Joe Smoke Dance Company, Joe Smoke Dance Company, and we never see Joe Smoke Soloist, then again, you're probably in the wrong category. Email Ben. We have lots of grants for ensembles and nonprofit arts organizations. The majority of our portfolio is made up of that, and this category is pure for people who are not in a group. Your work should be primarily solo in nature, so please don't make the mistake of applying to us to do something that's collaborative with another artist. we understand that if you're a performer, and let's say I'm a musician composer and I compose for the trumpet and I decide that I'm going to make a composition for 4 trumpets, obviously I'm going to need to use part of my $10,000 fellowship to pay 3 other trumpet players to arrive on stage, and during my rehearsals and my videotaping of my work to fulfill the grant. I'm going to have to showcase the new composition for 4 trumpets. But I'm going to stand up front. Everyone's going to know I'm the fellow. I'm the composer. It's going to be clear that I'm the lead artist and that it's my work. So again, we're not fixated on the fact that you're always a soloist, but we're fixated on the fact that you're the creative genius that gets the money and decides what your next step is as an artist. So please be prepared that in your grant, if you do include anyone else that needs to get paid, the framer of your work, the background artist, the person who does your video projections, all that stuff, the costumes and props, that's going to be within your 10K. There isn't a second allotment of money for that. One last note on this page is that you will apply now, but you won't hear from us until May or June of next year. We have no idea what our budget's going to be like next year. Traditionally, the city council and the mayor approve a budget for every city department in April. This last year, it wasn't in April because of COVID. So please don't worry if you don't hear from us until next July, because this schedule here is traditional, but is not currently not accurate, because we always feel like we're a month and a half behind with COVID, because our world is changing as much as everyone else's world is changing. So suffice to say that if you don't hear from us by next July 31st, then you should make sure that you touch base with us. Let me tell you a little bit about the scoring, because I want you to think about the panelists when you're putting your proposal together. So the panelists are scoring you out of 100 points, and 80 points is for what you've already done in your career. So you're telling us on your resume where you've shown in the past, you're showing us in your relevant and compelling letters of support who else thinks you're awesome, and you're showing us artistic samples from the last 3 years so we know where you're jumping off from to make your new work. That is the key part of the proposal. You want all those 80 points for everything that you've done already, because that is where your focus should be with this grant. It is not a grant for a snappy proposal, like I said, where you're going to change the world with 10K. The panelists are very familiar with the fact that a proposal only breaks a tie. It is only 20 points for that last half a page of what you tell us you're going to do with the 10K, how you're going to advance your existing body of work with this fellowship. But please don't spend a lot of time worrying about forecasting exactly what you'll be doing in spring of 2022. Like I said, a couple of realistic and innovative ideas is sufficient. And I will say 2 other things here for strategy's sake. The panelists often roll their eyes if you say something very simplistic like, I've always wanted to make my work bigger. That's great, but it doesn't tell them anything else about what the advancement of your work will be. Or artists often say, I've always wanted to make an installation. Again, that's great, but if you choose to say either of those 2 things, I would tell you that you will not stand out, because those are very common things that artists will do when they're not doing a great job of forecasting the details of where they're going with their work. And again, those things are totally great to do, but elaborate, please. Why an installation? Why does your work need to be 10 foot tall instead of 4 foot tall? That's more important to the panelists, the why part, than it is just the proclaiming that you're going to use the money wisely. All right, there may be a tricky place on the application where you're asked to give a business advancement virtual network number of 5 digits. Is that correct, Ben? It's a 5-digit number?
5 or 6 digits, that's right. It is optional at the moment.
Yeah, it's optional. Please don't get tripped up by it. If for some reason you get worried, I'm giving you the strategic advice now to put in 5 zeros or 6 zeros and move on with it. If you are selected for this opportunity next year, we will make sure we enroll you in Bavin so that you are an official city vendor and you can officially get the fellowship. But this is one of those strange bureaucratic requirements that we feel like we must put on the application, but it is not something that is judged. So I wouldn't lose sleep over it. And then, again, I've spoken many times about, the panel won't even meet till next February, March. Our budget doesn't even become relevant till next April. If the city continues to have budget woes, we can expect fewer fellowships or even fewer dollar amounts. And we maintain the right to do that because we would rather have the program continue at a smaller scale than eliminate a program. All right, workshops. We're pre-recording a webinar tonight. If after this evening you have more questions, you have several options. You can either attend our second workshop, our webinar on Thursday, October the 22nd at 6:30 p.m. and ask your questions to us live online, voice to voice or chat to chat. Or you can play this recording over again and look and search for the place that answers your question. And Ben and I will make sure that the best webinar appears in this space in the near future. Okay, getting into the application itself. And again, very straightforward. Cover page, basic material, who are you, where do you live, what's your phone number, where do we contact you? Please make sure that your address there is where you pay taxes. That is how we judge your residency, where you live. Your narrative materials, which is your artist statement, your artist statement, your philosophy, and sort of the nature of your work, followed by what you propose to do with the funds. So 1 page and then a half a page. Your resume is super important. Please spend time updating your resume. Make sure it's chronological. Make sure it includes the best histories and performances. Make sure you have at least 15 years. I will pause here to answer a common question, which is, I've been an artist for 35 years. Should I include 35 years on my resume? You don't have to. In fact, the panelists appreciate brevity. So if you can just focus on the latest work and your latest accomplishments, then please do that because you're saving them lots of reading. They're less impressed with volume in your proposal than they are with value. So they're looking for what you've been doing recently, the quality of the spaces, the curators, the accomplishments. That's how they're going to move through your materials. And they will, in fact, often read your resume before they even read your artist statement. Your artistic work samples, I put this little question here to remind me that you are selecting one category. Please do not try to do both. We have a very hard time flipping back and forth between these various things during a panel meeting. So if you choose, most of you tonight are visual artists, so I would tell you to choose your 10 images of recently completed work. These should be digital files. You should know that they are going to be projected in a boardroom on a large screen. So the panelists will be able to see them in detail. They may see your work at home on a smaller computer, but it will be projected in the boardroom. So make sure the quality is good and don't be uber worried about I do installation work and I need to show 5 details of all my installations. The panelists are super smart. They know what they're looking at. It would be fine to include 1 overall image of an installation and 1 detail or 2 details. They know what texture is. They know what transparency is. You can make some notes to them about if your work doesn't photograph easily, but by and large, they're going to get most of that from your narrative already. So keep it simple. If you don't have to use 10 images and you can do it in 8, do it in 8. Because again, saving them time is a marker of your confidence. And then the last thing I would say about any of these, if you choose video clips, very few people choose audio tracks. This is the most common choice. This is the second most common choice, even if you're a poet or a dancer. I mean, a musician. Most of the time, rather than sending us an audio track of you reading your work, the panel really wants to see you. They want to see if you have a costume or the way that you gesticulate. That's critical for them to judge you as a musician or a poet. So back to my other concern here, besides choosing one category, is this is your most recent and relevant work. It is the thing that is the jumping off point for where you propose to go as an artist. The only reason to show them something older in this section is to show them something that's a theme that you're returning to from a long time ago. So if you are returning to a 10-year-old theme, then I would say include 1 image at the very end and make sure you note that this is just to show them that you're returning to this blankety blank theme that you addressed 10 years ago as already stated in your narrative. One last bit of advice about the 10 images or the video clips: do not hold back and leave your best, most iconic work for last. Assume that the panelists look up during the meeting, they look at the first 4 or 5 images, they already have an idea in their mind at that point. They may even start to look down and take notes. So please put your best work first and don't try to build some sort of momentum in the 10 images or in the video clips. And again, the only reason you would stray from that is if you are telling us that you're returning to some old theme. Do not submit marketing material. The panelists don't want to see a gallery written press release about you. They don't want to see a clipping from the LA Times, from a group show where your name is mentioned once. These are warm documents that are not hot, hot, hot. And if you can only attach 3 things to the end of your proposal that are the exclamation point of your proposal, don't put anything on the end that's lukewarm. You'd be better off to have 1 amazing letter of recommendation written by someone in the last 1 or 2 years, as it says here, and that they specifically write about the quality, content, relevance, and impact of your work. They may address what you propose to do with the grant money, but this also is a common mistake from artists. They send an old letter, they send a letter that's about job application to something that's not this fellowship. They send the writer of their support letter their proposal, and all the person does is take the same language out of your narrative and put it in the letter. A letter that doesn't add value to your grant is a downer. It doesn't help the panelists end on a crescendo. The name of the writer may impress them, but if the writer is saying the exact same thing you've already said in your narrative, it doesn't strike them as valuable to elevate your work in the competition. How are we doing on questions, Ben?
No questions so far, Joe. There was a question regarding word count on these narratives, and I'll jump in and just say right off the bat, the narrative portion consists of your artist statement, as Joe mentioned. That's a 900-word limitation. And then your proposal, the 20% pitch for what you would do with a fellowship is a 300-word limitation. We'll cover that in more detail when we do an overview of the online application.
Okay, Ben, I have the preparing and submitting online. Do you want to make some notes to
Sure.
our colleagues about the technology of the grant?
So Joe, if you actually stop sharing, I'll share my screen.
Going right ahead.
Great. So as you mentioned, our goal is to make this a super simple online application. So it's our easiest online application for our various grant programs. And let me show you here. So on that last slide that Joe showed, it gives you a link to DCA's SurveyMonkey Apply grant application platform. SurveyMonkey Apply, it used to be known as Fluid Review. It is an outside company that the City of LA contracts with to host our online application. We don't own it, but we do use it. So any technical issues, unfortunately, is oftentimes best handled by them directly. But you have the advantage of looking at this now, so you have an opportunity to take it to number one, register for an account if you don't already have one, and to troubleshoot any like tech issues you have now, so you can seek my support or go to SurveyMonkey Applies for their support. But on that last page in our guidelines, it takes you to this link, dca-la.smapply.org. It takes you to DCA's landing page, and you can see our available grant programs. And the one we're talking about today is the COLA Master Artist Fellowship. So if you've never logged into this platform before, if you've never applied to this program before, the thing you're going to want to do first is to register for a new account, and that's the green button up here on top. Enter your name and contact information. Make sure to register as an individual, as these are grants intended for individual artists. Now, if you've applied to the COLA program in the past, your Fluid Review login credentials should work. So my recommendation is to try logging in first using your old email address and password. And if it doesn't work, go ahead and register for a new account. So I'm going to log in right now in this little test account, so you have a preview of what this platform looks like. Once you've logged in, registered, you're going to see this application screen will be blank because you haven't applied for anything yet. To access our programs, click on the Programs button up on top there, and you'll see the two available opportunities. We're talking about the COLA Fellowship today. So if you haven't started one before, you can click on the More button and start an application. So you have a sense of what this interface looks like. Let's take a quick peek at what the online application looks like. Again, we have 5 key tasks to fulfill to submit an application. And the bulk of it's this very first item, the application form. Consider this screen as your task list. It's kind of like it's your checklist for things to do. This is the 5 separate items that you need to complete before you're able to submit a complete application. You can see my submit button will not allow me to click on it yet because I still have things in process. Things you haven't started yet are denoted by this kind of like grayed out circle. Things that are kind of you've started and are in process have this like half.
Sorry for interrupting, but we're not seeing anything.
Ben,
You.
yeah, Ben, are you presenting?
I am. Thank you for stopping me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Back up a little bit. I also wasn't seeing anything, but I thought it was just me because I'm a co-host.
I apologize for that. Okay. Are you seeing a screen now?
Yes.
Okay. My apologies, folks. I totally missed that. I was just going on cruise control here. All right. So let me back up.
It's still black. It's still black.
It's still blacked out?
Yeah.
I'm seeing white in the center, Ben.
All right. How about now? Still
Yes.
black?
Now I see.
Okay. Sorry for that technical difficulty. All right. So let me back up a bit. The DCA-LA-SMApply.org page. This is that landing page for SurveyMonkey Apply. If you haven't registered before, there's a green button here to register. Make sure to register as an individual. If you've applied in the past, do try logging in using what was previously Fluid Review login credentials. If this is the very first time you're logging in, you're not going to see anything listed here under all applications. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to click on Programs here, where you'll have an opportunity to apply for the fellowship. Click on the green More button, and this button will be a Start or Apply button. But I started one, so I have a pending application we can take a peek at. So this is where, this is the screen where I realized I wasn't sharing my screen successfully. This is the task list screen of your application. It outlines the 5 key components of an application. Once these are all completed, this button here will not be grayed out and will be green. You can click on it and submit an application. Things that are in process are denoted by this half green moon icon. Things that haven't been started are is this grayed out circle. And things that have been completed is a very reassuring check mark like this. Let's take a peek at the application form because this is the bulk of your submission. These are the key items that Joe described earlier. This very first page is what we call the cover page, basic information about yourself. Sorry. This is the cover page, first page. Basic information about yourself, name, contact information, an indication of what your art form and discipline is, indication of which council district within the city of LA you live in, or if you live elsewhere in LA County, places like Altadena, other municipalities like Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, and so forth. This is where you can enter that. Quick note about your specialization, any additional brief description about your style of work, and the certification that you're submitting everything here that is accurate and complete. The narrative is simply 2 questions. And my advice to folks is always to understand what the prompt is and to do all your writing in a separate application like Microsoft Word. So you can take advantage of the copy editing tools there like spell check, grammar check, word count. Word count is especially important because, as I mentioned earlier, both of these narrative responses have word limitations. The introductory text about yourself as an artist is limited to 900 words. This is what 80% of your score is based on again. And then the much smaller narrative response is the work you plan to do with a potential $10,000 fellowship. And that's a much shorter length response of 300 words. So take these prompts and write your responses in Microsoft Word and you're ready to go. You can just come back here and copy paste. But be careful when copy pasting. Sometimes a common error that folks may fall into is when they paste their response, SurveyMonkey Apply will automatically truncate your response if it exceeds the limitation. So do check for that when you're pasting in your response to this. So with the cover page and narrative responses, you can mark this as complete. And that will turn into a green check mark here and back on your application task list. Resume is pretty self-explanatory. You can simply attach a file here. I'm just going to pick a random document here so I can mark that as complete. As Joe mentioned, make sure it's a detailed resume focusing on the most recent years, but must show at least 15 years of experience unless you're a dance choreographer, in which case you can show 8 years of minimum experience. Artistic work samples is a very important section. As Joe mentioned, you have 2 ways to go about this. The first one is sharing hyperlinks, URLs. You can link to YouTube, Vimeo, a website, up to you. In any case, when you enter a link, it's always a good idea to add a quick note about what it is that you are intending the panelists to see. If it's a specific video that may be longer in duration, you may want to call out specific start and stop markers. It's always a good idea that we encourage folks to edit the video such that when the panelist goes in and they're going to view this electronically, they can simply click on the link and see the exact content you want them to see. And to that end, it's always a good idea to avoid any passwords, any special instructions. Just have them click on it and experience your content. You can provide up to 3 links in this manner, or you can provide the 10 images as well. With images, rather than providing links, you'll be uploading individual image files. So make sure those are of high quality. Again, once this is marked complete, it will show up as a green check mark in your task list. Supplemental items, as I mentioned, you're allowed to provide up to 3 of these. Outside voices that support and share added value in how you are awesome. That's not your voice, but instead other people's voice. You can provide up to 3 files. Similarly, you can just click on a link, and I'm just going to pick a random file as well. Add a note there too. Once you've completed all these items here on your task list, that's when you will be able to click submit. You can see the button has turned green. And that will officially mark a completed online submission. When you submit an application to us electronically, you're going to get an automatically generated email from us with the next steps. And that next step is to mail us a hard copy of the text components of your application, basically your cover page and narrative. That's the one element that we still need a hard copy of as part of our process. No need to send us any of additional supplementary materials and images and video links, as those are accessed electronically by our panelists. Any questions around the application process? Stop sharing. I have a question here. Will it also take docs and page? If you're referencing documents as supplementary materials, if you're referencing Word documents, you can certainly upload those, certainly. But as far as your narrative responses, you have to enter that text into the online application itself, as I showed you earlier. We have another question around better to send PDF, including a couple of pictures, or one JPEG pic. The size requirement for the images.
Yeah, the size requirement, I believe, is listed in the proposal somewhere.
I believe it is, Joe. Generally speaking, as high quality and as large a file size as SurveyMonkey Apply will accept, and it's a pretty generous size limitation, I think it'll accept files of over 500 megabytes. There's another question around using Microsoft Word. Yes, so let me clarify. I was recommending using a copy editing word processing app like Pages or Microsoft Word when writing your narrative components. And again, I recommend using those just so you can take advantage of its copy editing tools, something that SurveyMonkey Apply doesn't offer. So once you've written those portions in whatever application you've used, such as Pages or Word, you're going to copy paste the responses you prepared in advance into SurveyMonkey Apply.
I think I'll jump in, Ben, and help with the question about the reason why we want you to be able to submit 10 images is that we expect that the panelists will have a good understanding of the work that you create. So if you're going to be one of those artists that tries to collage together a lot of materials and show more, it may backfire because the panelists may not understand what that is, right? So the only reason you might do that is if you have a piece that needs to show a detail and that you need to fit that into one PDF image. Generally speaking, again, assume the panelists are super smart, they work at museums, they get it, they will understand what they're looking at. They will only be confused if you try to put too much in front of them, because then it seems that you're not understanding their skill in decoding your work in a flat environment. And trust me, they're experts. They don't need more than two details of anything unless it's a super complicated installation that has a kind of experiential quality that you're showing from multiple angles. You don't know who the panelists are. We don't know who the panelists are, Wanda. We don't select them until we read all the proposals, because if everyone chooses Ben Espinosa as an expert to write their letter of recommendation, then I'm not going to put Ben Espinosa on the panel, right? Because then Ben Espinosa will have to step out of the room, and I will have multiple applications that cannot be scored by all the panelists. So we wait for you to tell us everything, and then we decide. I may also say here that there are years where we have a lot of photographers, a lot of video artists. There are years when everyone's an abstract painter. We don't understand how that happens in the world, but it does. And so we also have to cater to the volume that we receive. There's a lot of musicians and only one dancer. We may not have as much dance expertise on the panel. I was saying all that without my camera on. I'm back with you, Ben.
Okay.
Yes, panelists are always revealed after the fact not by name, but by their title. You know, curator at a major museum, curator of a nonprofit art space, past COLA fellow. We don't think that the names are really important for you. They're listed in the catalog every year. So I would actually say to you, if you really care about who the past panelists are, look in the catalog. But to try and cater your application to a set of unknown panelists just seems like a head game that's not worth it. Any other comments in the chat, Ben, that you feel like you want to take on?
Sure. There's a question regarding COVID adjustments and whether we should address that in the proposal for live gatherings and performances. You want to take that one, Joe?
I think you should always, in a proposal, give us your best estimate. It's an ideal situation. So tell us what you can ideally do with $6,000 to $7,000 of spending money on art and the rest paying yourself, and make it ideal. And we will help you walk it backwards if COVID prohibits you from doing what you propose to do in its fullest extent.
And I'll remind folks we are forecasting activities into the spring of 2022. So we all have our fingers crossed that there'll be some semblance to normalcy by then.
Yeah, exactly. So before I do the last couple of pages, Ben, before I take the mic back and conclude for everyone, I want to highlight a couple of things that you've said that I think that the applicant should heed as important. The first is to keep your entire document in Word. Even if you apply to this program every year, which we totally encourage you to do, to just keep sending it in because it's not a taxing proposal, should not take you more than 6 hours to compile these things. The reason you keep it all in Word is because even if you forget your password to the SurveyMonkey platform, you can always access your materials and upload under a modified name or a new password. So please do that. It's critical. Ben washed over one thing very quickly on the cover page. We asked you for your specialization, and let me tell you why you don't want to put a super long sentence there and launch into your narrative. The reason we have specialization on the front page is because imagine you're a panelist and you receive 400 applications to read, and they are in alphabetical order. I know as myself as a panelist, that's not the way I would want to read them. I would want to parse them out. I want to read all the sculptors first, and then I want to read all the installation artists, and then I want to read all the painters, and then I want to read all the photographers, and then I want to read all the everyone else. And so we're asking you to put something very specific on the front page under specialization because it helps the panelists understand what bucket to put you in if they want to read the proposals in buckets. And that helps them also see, oh, we have 15 video artists. I really need to make sure that I'm doing a good job here comparing and contrasting these folks. So please be precise and factual in the specialization category, and don't go too much further than painter, large abstract work, or photographer, documentary, or photographer, conceptual landscapes, something like that. So keep it simple, but basically tell them your medium first, and then maybe a couple of other keywords so they understand who you are. Under the place where you're making notes for the panelists about your artistic samples, there's a place for you to make a note for us if indeed you already have a full-length work up on Vimeo, but you want the panelists to begin at 2 minutes and 55 seconds. So that's the right way to use a note for us. That the thing you don't want to do in the notes is tell them more than the title of the work, because then you have crossed a line, and once again, you're telling them what to think about your work. The work speaks for itself. They don't need to know that you made it while you were, doing this, that, and other things were happening in your life with your family. They're going to see drama. They're going to see that. They're going to see the emotions. Assume the panelists understand what the work's about, and you don't need to elaborate more than a title. The links, I think we do sometimes have panelists have trouble with links, so please test your links and make sure they work, and please make sure they're live next February. The worst thing you can do is put up links and then in January take them all down, because the panelists are going to look for those links and be baffled that they cannot see your work. That's why I would say don't do 3 links, do 1 link, and make sure that there's some real physical things that they can look at that are uploaded. And the last thing I'll say about the material Ben covered is that we asked you to send us a hard copy of your materials because our city has a kind of, for lack of a better word, enforcement of a proposal comes with a wet ink signature. So we really do want you to print out your materials. It's probably smart for you to print them out yourself in case your computer crashes and you have to recreate your materials next year. But do us a favor of sending us a copy, signing it in ink, saying, thanks, Joe, thanks, Ben, here's wishing the best, whatever. We just make sure that you send us that, because it really does help us to understand that you meant to apply. And that if we ever were audited, we would have so many of you that obeyed that request and sent us something with a wet ink signature on it, that we wouldn't have any issues. And that's it. Do we need to specify? I'm going to go to the questions now. Actually, you know what? Let me share screen so that people can leave, and then I'll go back to the questions. So Ben, can you just hold on 30 seconds here? I want to go to present now. I want to present the last 2 pages of the materials. Ben, give me a holler when my presenting screen comes up.
Not yet up.
Can you see?
It is up now.
Okay, got it. I just want everyone to know that there's a space where Ben said that you list your city council district. Under our FAQs, there's a link to the city council district maps. There's an online portal called Neighborhood Information. If you don't know what city council district you live in, this is a very opportune time for you to understand which one it is in, because you are voting this November, and it's super important that you know that you're in Council District 13, which is Silver Lake Echo Park, or 14, which is downtown LA, and then they're not adjacent. So 15 becomes San Pedro and Wilmington. So please don't confuse this with your county supervisorial district. There are 5 county districts. There are 15 city council districts. So we're looking for your number out of 15, not out of 5. And then the last page just tells you how to communicate with us after today. So if we do not get to your question or you have follow-up questions, the best way to get us is by emailing us at dcagrants@lacity.org. We have put a slash through our phone number to remind you and to remind you that we are not in our offices. We are all working from home, and therefore calling our office and leaving a voicemail will get you the slowest response versus email, which will get you a more immediate response. Here's all of our names down here. I'm Joe Smoke. This is Ben Espinosa. We have another amazing grants associate named Brenda Reynolds. You will get Ben and Brenda first, and they will bounce your question up to me if it's so complicated that they can't answer it. But they are super, and they will be able to answer 95% of the questions. And lastly, please don't wait till the 11th hour on the 11th day at the 11th minute to ask us your question, because we work 9 to 5, and we will not be looking at our email at 8 p.m. on the deadline night. And we will also should have forewarned you earlier that Fluid Review, Survey Apply, and SurveyMonkey are headquartered on the East Coast in Canada. So another reason to start your proposal at least 2 days in advance is if you have a technical problem that has to be solved by SurveyMonkey, you're going to need time to get an email to the East Coast and for them to get it back to you with a reply about what your technical issue is. That is not something that we can help you with. All right, I'm going to stop presenting. You're going to see my face again, and we're going to go through these questions. If you feel like you've learned it all and you're ready to go, please sign off with our best hopes that you will spend the time, apply this year, apply every year until you get it, and to understand that this is, we're so proud to be in a city that has individual artist fellowships. There are very, very few places in the world that offer grants like this to professional avant-garde artists. And we are very proud that this program has been going on for 24 years, and you could be part of the 25th year. So hang in if you want to hear the answers to these last questions. Otherwise, you're invited to log off with our best regards. I think, how many applications do we usually get a year? It depends, but I honestly, 400 is reasonable. So you don't have a live exhibit plan for this application period. We don't even have a budget. So we know we're going to do a catalog. The catalog represents all of the artists, whether you are a poet, a dancer, a musician, a designer, or an artist. So we will at least have the catalog, and anything more we get is going to be amazing. Do you need to have a venue? No, we are presenting you. The catalog fulfills the requirement that public money end with a public project. So we will define the locations for you. In fact, I should have said earlier, please do not apply with anything that's site specific. So if your proposal is to do a sculpture on Venice Beach, you haven't read the guidelines, because the work that you create for this fellowship needs to fit in a gallery space, a proscenium theater, and be photographed for a catalog. It cannot be out in a public space that we can't get to, that you might not be able to get rights to. Again, be realistic. Panelists are going to watch the whole 5-minute video, or shall we reduce them? Put your best moments first. So if you, I can't tell you that they're going to watch the entire 5-minute video. It depends on how interested they are in your resume and your artist statement. Generally speaking, they will, because the panelists see this as an opportunity to do site visits with hundreds of artists that they may want to meet for other opportunities. So they're going to look at your work for as long as they need to before they make up their mind. All the more reason to put the best material first, just in case they watch 3 minutes and start taking notes. Anything else that comes up in the chat, Ben? You let me know. I'm going to close the chat.
One question here, Joe. If you're barely short of 15 years of practice, should you take a risk with applying, or should you just wait till you hit full 15 years?
I would tell you that you should apply to let the panelists know you're available. It is a very common issue with the panelists that if you're barely at 15 years, they note that out loud at the panel meeting. This is a grant for people who've made 15 years or more of accomplishments. So you should be prepared to apply and introduce yourself to the panelists and maybe get some supplementary opportunities out of this, or become a trailblazer for a year. But it's very rare for someone who barely has 15 years to be selected. In the 300 artists that have received this grant, I can only think of that happening maybe 15 times out of 300. So yeah, there's a chance, but don't assume that you're going to outrank somebody who's been, making commitments to the Los Angeles Arts Ecology for 20 years. Okay, a couple last questions here, Joe. Better to create a visual demo if they want to show an installation piece, or is writing a written explanation enough? Yeah. Again, assume the panelists are super smart and they're going to know from your narrative when you describe your work that they're going to have a pretty good sense of imagination of what that looks like. They will have heard of you before because these panelists don't come out of nowhere, and they're really, again, super smart. Written, again, I would say to you, a video is always better than written material, and here's why. Think of yourself as a panelist, and Ben Espinosa invites you for this opportunity, and then he sends you 300 applications. You're reading, you're reading, you're reading, your eyes are bleeding, they're bleeding, they're bleeding. The last thing you want is to read more. So even if you're a poet and all of your work is printed and that you're a poet on print and not a performance poet, I would say to you, you'd still be better off to set up the video camera and read your work to the camera, because the panelists will enjoy the audiovisual experience rather than reading, reading, reading more. So I think that that's sage advice. Always choose the more exciting option, not the one that's more written.
Right. And then the last question here is, how are slideshow videos received for sound-centered media?
If you produce slideshows, then you're going to show us slideshows, and it's going to appear like a video. It's going to be, 5 minutes long. They're going to watch the images progress because they are seeing a simulation of what they would see in a gallery situation, correct? There isn't a reason for you to do a slideshow because we time the clicking in our boardroom. We want 10 separate images. We don't want you to put together a slideshow of 10 images that's on an auto timer, because the panelists may want to pause on number 3 and pause again on number 7 and talk about them. So again, I think the only reason you'd be sending us a PowerPoint presentation is if that's indeed what you present in a gallery or a museum. Anything else that we need to cover tonight, Ben, before we send these folks off to win some money?
No, I think that's it. So, I want to say thanks to everyone for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thanks to everyone, and we wish you great luck.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Good night to everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.